Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Thor: Love and Thunder. It's Disney Plus Day. This is the first in a series of brand new things that have been released tonight. It's a little bit after midnight on the 8th here in September. The official Disney Plus Day. Although I'm not really sure why it's this Disney Plus Day and not the day that Disney Plus was launched in November 12th of 2019. I suppose we're going to do something there then as well. I don't know. But yeah, Thor is the first in a series of different things I'll be highlighting over the next few days. Normally, when I do this, each episode is randomly picked at the end of the previous episode through an algorithm, whatever. It's a application that I use to pick a random number that correlates to a spreadsheet that has a name next to it of a thing that's currently on Disney Plus, and that's what I choose to watch, whether I like it or not. Anyway, I'm sure I can explain it a whole lot better somewhere else sometime, but we're going to talk about Thor right now, and then maybe we'll give a hint as to what we're seeing next. Anyway, this is the fourth film, the second directed by Taika Waititi, and he's the guy behind What We Do in the Shadows and Reservation Dogs, and a number of other different shows. Some of my favorite shows on TV, but he's been doing stuff everywhere. You find his name everywhere. So yeah, he's directed this for the second time, and it's just a big fun adventure. If you're looking for something that is a bit more earnest and serious and really builds out the macho tough guy view of Thor, this isn't it. Yeah, he's super buff, and there's one point he gets pretty naked, and that's your thing. Hey, if there's a man that doesn't look bad naked, it's Chris Hemsworth. Jeez. Anyway, Natalie Portman doesn't seem to mind. Or, sorry, Jane Foster. Yes, she's back. She is Thor's ex-girlfriend, and we get to see... she only gets a passing reference in Thor Ragnarok. Oh, we broke up. Because Natalie Portman wasn't really available. But somehow they teased her back. Well, she wanted to do something fun. She had something a little less serious. She's a science gal, but she didn't get to do any big bust em ups. She's just the girlfriend. In many cases, that's not what you necessarily want to be. You're a big major movie star, and you just want to be the superhero's girlfriend. And other than being the damsel in distress in many cases, there's sometimes you're just romantic tension, and some people want more than that in a role. And hey, you know what? She was promised in order to come back it would be much more fun, and hey, she gets to be a Thor. Just as it was in the comics, there was a point when when Thor was unworthy, Jane Foster was chosen to pick up the hammer Mjolnir and become the mighty Thor. This is a series. There's a sort of a run that happened maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago or something like that, around 2015, I think, written by Jason Aaron. If you want to look it up, seriously, it's one of the best runs in Thor in years. I mean, it's still great, but it's one of my favorite runs from the last few years, especially. Because, not just because it's a different Thor story, and Thor, Odin's son, certainly shows up in it, but it's this great struggle between Jane becoming this new Thor and certainly not being accepted for who she is in both the real life, in our world. Some people are like, oh, Thor needs to be a man, how dare you make her a woman? Hey, guess what? Thor's been a frog. A frog has been Thor, I should say. Or, no, Thor was turned into a frog. Anyway. But there's also another frog that has Thor powers, Throg. And hey, you know what? Storm from the X-Men? She was a black mutant woman who had the powers of Thor back in the 80s. So don't give me this crap that you're like, oh, women can't be Thor. Yeah, guess what? They can. So why don't you change her name, make her like Girl Thor, She Thor? No, just get over it. Have fun. Have fun. Go to the movies and have fun. Or watch Disney Plus and have fun. Yeah, I mean, this is all over the place. It is tonally beyond the selections of all the Guns N' Roses songs in this, and also a Ronnie James Dio song at the end. shifts, the film shifts tonally in whiplash, in a whiplash fashion. It starts really grimly with the death of a child, and then it just goes into a big super alien battle with the Guardians of the Galaxy. By the way, I'm not going to spoil everything here for you, but I mean the movie's been out, and honestly, if you're a big Thor fan, you were gonna watch this. You would have already watched this, or you're going to be watching this really really soon because it's now on Disney Plus. And I don't know why you would watch me first before you watched it. But hey, to each their own. I'm happy you're here if you're actually looking at this, all six of you. So yeah, it's the kind of thing where it then shifts back from a big battle to a serious look back on where Thor came from and his depression and how he was dealing with that after the whole events of the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame and everything else, and then zips back into something more fun, and then zips to Jane having cancer, and which is the impetus for her coming back into Thor's life as a Thor. So yeah, it borrows heavily from the original story in the comics if you've already read that, but it's not exactly one to one. It is very much condensed. What was happened in the comics happened over a large period of time. This is a 2-hour movie, so it only happens over maybe a course of a few days at most. At 2 days, I have no idea, but either way, you get a great villain in Batman. Yeah, Christian Bale, another Chris, by the way. So, yeah, all the Chris's in the Marvel universe now. You got the Pratt, you got the Evans, and you got the Hemsworth. Yeah, you also get Christian Bale. So you get Batman versus Thor. Although he looks nothing like Batman in this. He is. His character's not exactly like he looked in the comics. He doesn't look, and he doesn't act the same as he does in the comics. He is pretty dark and twisted, but with a weird sense of humor. He laughs in this. Gore in the comics, I don't recall laughing. And yeah, it's still but he puts his all into this. He is pretty dang freaky, and it's great to see him just doing it. So Christian Bale is fantastic in this, and of course also Tessa Thompson returns as Valkyrie, and just that sort of even when she's just sitting at a meeting for New Asgard, looking bored as hell, she is just fantastic. So yeah, Tessa Thompson, she gets a neat little sort of Westworld reunion because Chris's brother Liam is in this film as Thor. Yeah, technically as Thor, because from what they did in Ragnarok when Loki posed a play in the story of him in Thor's life, well, he and Matt Damon return, and with a surprise guest, with a few surprises here and there, faces you'll recognize. And yeah, so it's just a big little comedy piece in there because hey, you know what? After the results of everything that happened at the end of Thor Ragnarok and all the last two Avengers films, New Asgard has a home, as we probably know if you watched the Avengers films. They have a home. The people live on Earth, and Valkyrie runs it. And so yeah, she's by the way, she's born in Los Angeles, but she does I think I mean maybe the English people will poop all over this, but I think she has a great, very sexy British accent, and yeah, she's fantastic. And hey, you know what? I imagine this film did not get played in a number of very conservative countries like Saudi Arabia or China or something like that because of Taika is not afraid to support the LGBTQ community, because there's a number of gay and directly gay references in there, like Korg made with his people are all men or all male. Valkyrie is a lesbian king who, yes, she's king and she's a lesbian. So yeah, I don't want to mess that up by digging into it any further and sounding like I'm an expert on how that all works. But hey, she's title as she's title. And they even toss in a little bit about Heimdall's son who appears in this. He chooses the name Axel because he's a big Guns N' Roses fan. You know, the classic rock stuff. I feel old. Anyway, that is really off the beaten path of this, but I know some people have a lot of problems with this film because like I said, it's tonally, it shifts like crazy. It's short, but it moves pretty well, and my attitude is, yeah, while it does have tendrils and connections to so many different aspects of the Marvel universe, it also sort of sits on its own, where it has no consequences that we know of yet for the rest of the Marvel universe except in Thor's life, which I'm not going to ruin for you. But Thor's life is changed dramatically by the end of this story. How it sticks, how it continues, I have no idea. But I'm very sure this will have a pretty humongous impact on probably phase 6, 5, 6. I mean, they've already talked about to us at Comic-Con about 4, 5, and 6 and everything else. But beyond that, who knows? Who knows? We get to see a number of different characters we've never seen before, and also little set piece background things. If you look really closely during the final battle sequence, in the background there's statues of different cosmic entities, in a sense. We get to see Eternity, of course, which is kind of one of the plot points, and we get to see the Living Tribunal. This is the sort of the three-faced thing that's floating there. We get to see one of the Watchers. We get to see a Celestial. We get to see Death. We get to see a few others I didn't recognize right off the bat. The good thing about this is I get to pause it where I want to. I just didn't bother referencing it while I was watching it. But yeah, I didn't want to pause too much, or I'd be up all night, and I don't want to do that. I still have to watch She-Hulk from tonight, so that's what I'm doing right after this. So anyway, yeah, this is, there's just lots of big action, but lots of, there's a romantic angle, it's a drama. At one point, they drop all to black and white with a few flecks of color here and there, and it looks like an independent film, but with hammers and swords and lightning bolts all smashing against each other and monsters in the dark. So yeah, it's shot beautifully. It's got an irreverent sense of humor, which again some people find as distracting or unnecessary. They want their thing to be just serious rock and roll superhero kind of thing. Some people think that maybe Thor might be depicted as too weak, I guess. But that's kind of the gist of this whole thing, because when you're looking, this really makes a commentary on man's relationship with gods. I mean, very early on, when the first Thor film came out, they made it very clear that Thor was not God or a god. It was just a name that was given to them by people who saw them as powerful beings that controlled their fate, and so were worshipped as such back in ancient times. They made it very clear that basically the Asgardians are just aliens that maybe live in a different dimension or somewhere out in space somewhere that came to Earth and interacted with humans at different points in history. And yeah, it would be understandable that some people would see them as gods, and very often, I mean, that's how our mythology works. We see things like a heavy storm or a volcano or whatever, and we attribute otherworldly beings, things beyond our control or comprehension, as being the things that are represented in these natural acts, these natural disasters or blessings, like rain. Rain, it can be a blessing or a horrible thing, whether it's a flood or the life-giving water you need to save a community that is suffering from drought. We apply all these things to all the things that have happened to us throughout history. When we didn't have science, we attributed these things to gods and the mystical beings. In this world, though, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the gods are real, and they even call themselves gods. I mean, gods is just a term for a supernatural being. They're not the creators of all, although some have taken on those titles in order to seem more impressive. Zeus is one of them, played by Russell Crowe in this. He is kind of the big wig. He acts like a superstar. Thor kind of worships him in a sense. He's like a kind of a template for his whole shtick, the whole thunder and lightning thing, and so yeah, we get to meet Russell Crowe as the god Zeus on par with Odin. So it's we get to see what happens when Thor runs across other gods from other cultures from not just our planet but cultures around the world. Like Korg's god is actually in this special city, Omnipotent City, I think. Yeah. So he's there. Nanu something, I can't remember his name. But yeah, there's gods from all over, and they just sort of hang out. And one of the main themes in this is that, is God real? And if he is, do they have does God or gods have any effect on our lives? Obviously, in our Christian Judeo system here, for a lot of us, we see one God. There are other cultures that see many gods, and whether they are directly related to our struggles or anything else, or if we use them as a source of comfort or inspiration through their words or histories and things like that we see books and things. It's really up to the culture and the religion we're born into. And in this, it starts off questioning the efficacy of gods at all. When Gore is a man who's suffering. He's the last follower of this one god. He watches his own daughter die in the first few minutes of this film. And he finally stumbles across this oasis and sees the god that he had worshipped. And he's like, oh, finally, the afterlife. I'm going to see the afterlife. My suffering was worth it all. And the god just mocks him. Like he's a fool for even bothering. And he's like, why do you shouldn't even bother. I know you're going to be replaced. We just use you for whatever. And in that moment, he is given this power that is used to become the God Butcher. I've just spoiled the first 5 minutes for you. That's it. So, but that's how he becomes the bad guy in this, and he takes on the role of just slaughtering gods left and right throughout the galaxy. And it's you think it's going to be just sort of an atheist manifesto kind of story, like God isn't real or gods are worthless even if they are. Why worship these creatures or God himself, herself? And why is there? Why should you believe in these things? And why should you have faith in these things? Why do you even believe in an afterlife? And that is kind of the underlying struggle and theme that goes throughout this. And stay to the final credit sequence, of course. There's a mid-credit sequence and a final credit sequence at the very end that you'll want to watch. And sort of, I don't know if to say it adds a certain balance to it, but don't base your understanding of the film's themes just on the first 5 minutes or an hour into it or whatever. There's a little bit more to it. I mean, it's not a definitive like, oh, this is the way things are. That's what I think. I think it lets you ask some questions, lets you think about some things and how people see deities, whether real or imagined, in our lives, in our heads, in our whatever. So, yeah, it's for a big goofy movie with a nervous, rambling, often confused and frustrated Thor. There are some deeper levels in this, and Taika does that a lot with a lot of his projects. So it's kind of, I like that. So, yeah, there's what else? Who else is in this? Yeah, well, no, I'm not going to spoil that. But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy are in here, so that's a given. So we get to see them for the first time since Endgame, and I bet you not tomorrow, but this weekend, I should say, at a D23 Expo where I will be. People who get to be in that panel, which at this point I'm not going to be, will probably get the second public look at the Guardians of the Galaxy. We got a pretty amazing look at them at San Diego Comic-Con, so I am looking forward to hearing more. They might release stuff online, so be ready this weekend for brand new trailers, brand new sneak peeks, maybe, and announcements and everything else. So, yeah, that's really all I can tell you. I was gonna instinctively randomly pick another episode, but I've already picked it out for us. It's going to be a short. It's going to be it's going to be a Simpsons short. I'm going to do a different thing each day. So like movie, short, series, and documentary. Somewhere, not in that order, but somewhere around that. But tomorrow is going to be a short. It's going to be the brand new Simpsons short, Welcome to the Club, and it's like 4 minutes long. I don't know, something like that. So that should be a pretty quick episode. won't be 20 minutes long. So yeah, so I'll see you back here tomorrow with The Simpsons. Welcome to the Club on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow.